Okay. So this is, I feel like some of the ideas that come to fruition because they're meant to. There's some kind of divine intervention that brings this, that makes this happen and makes it happen so successfully. So you have an idea and then you say, oh, I'll do that. And then as it grows and as it happens, it becomes more important than it did in the beginning. It almost has an energy of itself, and it has a force in the world that we didn't predict. And I think that this lineup it feels like an all-star lineup. All of the women that have agreed and are presenting today are friends of mine. I'm very honored to feel like I'm friends with you all, and that you to me embody Judaism personified. Your love for the Jewish people, your love for your Jewish heritage, your love for how to bring that out into the world in the different ways that you do it is so inspiring. And I think for you to be here together, for us all of us, if I look around the room and I see so many different women from different places in the country and different places in the Jewish community where you hang your hat or you don't hang your hat, you're part of the Jewish people, and we can listen to each other and we can emote and we can learn. And I think that that's what's so special about what we're doing tonight. For sure, we're doing that tonight. This feels like something rather unique that, you might belong to a synagogue and then you're part of that group, but this is sort of trying to break down and say, no, we're people as well as that. Yes. And there's that's important. And this is important where we can listen to each other. So I'm thrilled to be able to put this program together and to have the women here to be inspired and to share. I did ask the presenters not to be the sage on the stage sermonizing, but to share of themselves. Like, we're all women together. What's your focus? Where are you in this time of coming up to Rosh Hashana with COVID and with all the stresses and the busyness of your lives, and whether there's going to be real in-person services or not, and how we're going to hit the shofar. And there's so much going on. So to take a little parcel out of your day and come here and do this, thank you. And it speaks to the love you have of the Jewish people that you're here, you're showing up and you're sharing of yourself. So I asked Rachel Zerin to go first, to be our first presenter. So the way of the evening is that each presenter I asked to speak around 10 minutes, share what you're thinking about, what your focus is, what your dreams are, what your life is, what your community is, whatever it is that you want to share that's somewhat personal. Bringing in your wisdom, bringing in your experience, your life experiences, and share that with us. And then if we go through the four women, and then maybe we'll have some time, please God, at the end to maybe schmooze a little bit together. So right now, I want you to know there's over 40 women on this call, which I think is amazing. So Rachel, you're up to bat. Let me find what I wrote about you. Just to introduce my dear friend, Rabbi Rachel Zerin, was ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary in 2015. She received her MA in Talmud. While at JCS, she served as a student rabbi of Temple B'nai Shalom of Benton Harbor in Michigan and the Flemington Jewish Community Center in New Jersey, interning and going all over Massachusetts and Syracuse, and completed a clinical pastoral education through JTS, offering pastoral counseling to seniors. She has many interests, including Talmud, social justice, interfaith dialogue, and I could keep going on, but I would like to turn it over to Rachel, who is I guess the assistant rabbi, although you probably, it feels like you're completely overwhelmed with your job over at Temple Emmanuel here on the east side of Providence, Rhode Island. So Rachel, if you would please like to share with us some of your thoughts and where you're at this season.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, and thank you everyone for being here tonight and taking time out of such a busy summer, a busy year, a busy life. I don't know what the right phrase is, it's really an honor to be in this Zoom room with such wisdom and such presence, and to be presenting with such wonderful colleagues and friends. And I agree that it's such a blessing to be friends with everyone else who's presenting, except for Sharon, whom I've just met, and I know will become a friend, I'm sure. So you asked me what was on my mind, and there is a motto that we have in our family that has been particularly on my mind. The motto is that I turn to my son and I say, my number one job is to keep you healthy and safe. And I was trying to think how far back that goes. I actually think it goes back to maybe his 9-month or 1-year vaccinations, when he gave me that look of, why are you doing this to me? Because it hurts. And it just came to me that, you know, my number one job as your parent is to keep you healthy and safe. And that's what gets us through eating vegetables with dinner, and that's what gets us through vaccination shots, and that's what gets us through many moments. But this year, it hasn't quite felt like enough. This has not been an easy year in some ways, for the reasons that this hasn't been an easy year for any of us, and for some reasons that are particular to me and my family and my life. And that job hasn't been enough. And over the past several months, I have found myself thinking, well, clearly my number one job is to keep you healthy and safe, but what more is it that I need for you, my precious 5-year-old now? And I've realized that my number one job is to keep you healthy and safe. But my number one goal is that you be kind. And my number one hope is that you are resilient and loved. And these 3 things have become mantras for me. And if I can keep those at the front of my mind and at the front of my heart, those can guide me through everything else that has to happen. And Sharon, I think you said something about this earlier. I promise I didn't share my notes with her, but sometimes what we do for our children, we as grown-ups need ourselves the most. And I might say it a little bit differently, that the things that we want for the people we love the most, whether they are our children or other people that we love the most, are often the things that we need to bless ourselves with. So as we enter the year, I'm thinking about my number one responsibility to myself, to keep myself healthy and safe. My number one goal is to be kind. And my number one hope is to be resilient and loved. And in some ways, I could just stop there and leave you with that message, because I actually think that exercise of articulating what is your number one responsibility to yourself, your goal, and your hope, and really try to limit yourself to 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 things in each category, but no more, so that you can really sharpen what is it that you want and need to bless yourself with in the new year. That in itself is, I think, an incredibly worthwhile exercise. But I don't want to stop there. What I want to focus on is resilience, because if I had to pick an attribute of the year, it would be resilience. And I'm seeing some nodding heads in affirmation of that, right? What do we need most this year? I think resilience. And so what is resilience, right? How do we cultivate resilience? What is resilience in Judaism? And I've been thinking about that last question a lot, because there are many things about us as Jews that speak to resilience, right? We are a resilient people. We are the people that have survived for thousands of years with persecution and with everything that we have faced. We are a resilient people, and that is so part of the core of our story. But what teachings do we have that talk about resilience on an individual basis? And that piece I had to look harder to find. And so what I want to share now are really just where I am in teasing this out, some musings, some thoughts, some exercises that have helped me through the past few months and that will, I'm sure, continue to help me into the new year and hopefully help you as well. So what is it that helps make us resilient? I think one big thing, and I did do, I know there are some psychologists and social workers in the room, I did do a little reading, and I think what I'm about to say is in line with the kind of professional wisdom out there, but I'm always curious to hear more. But what I have found in my experience, one key to resilience is recognizing loss. And Alyssa, I'm glad that you asked me to go first because I'm going to take us to a little bit of a dark place, but I think that's where we need to go to get to that hopeful place. Judaism does a great job of helping us recognize loss when it is the traditional loss of death. But this year we have faced so much loss that doesn't fit into our normal framework. Right? Even what we were talking about as people were logging onto the call, the loss of having eye contact with other human beings when we're in group settings, the loss of human touch beyond the people who live in our households, the loss of expectations and hopes and dreams that we had for this year that felt so mundane we didn't even pause to consider that they wouldn't happen, and the loss of family and friends and thousands of people. The challenge of living in a time like we've been living in is that there is so much day to day that we run from thing to thing to thing, and we're always trying to focus on what's coming next, that it is so hard to remember to pause and recognize that loss. And one of the lessons that Judaism teaches us is that we have to remember the loss. We have to recognize the loss. And for me, recognizing that loss is one of the things that helps cultivate resilience. And so as we enter Elul, I gently and lovingly invite us all to go to that place of asking, what is it that we've lost that we haven't even taken the time to notice so that we can mourn it? And I'm not only going to talk about loss. Another thing that I think brings resilience is recognizing that we can control our response even when we can't control our circumstances, which could also be the motto of this year, right? And for this, I want to share a text that has been a companion to me throughout the past many months. It is from the Talmud. It's from Yevamot 121a, if anyone wants to look it up, but it is about Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Akiva. They happen to be going on this journey on the sea. They're traveling at the same time, but in separate ships. And a storm sets in. And Rabban Gamliel in his ship watches as Rabbi Akiva's ship is shattered. And he mourns and grieves because the only possibility he can imagine is that his friend and his colleague and this gadol, this great one in Torah, has drowned at sea. And so he mourns. But then he disembarks, he gets off and he walks onto dry land, and he's taken aback because what does he see? But his friend Rabbi Akiva sitting on the beach and teaching Torah. And he says, "My son, how did you survive this? What brought you up from the water?" And Rabbi Akiva says, "I grabbed on to a plank of the boat, and every time a wave came, I bowed my head, and instead of trying to avoid it and swim away from it, I let it wash over me. And in that way, I made it back to shore." For a multitude of reasons, this text has spoken to me and kept me company over these past several months. I think it speaks to this idea of controlling our response, even when we can't control our circumstances, of facing the challenges that come to us, and also of hope and trust, that Rabbi Akiva could hope and trust that that plank and those waves would bring him through. And lastly, I want to talk about connection and rootedness, because this too, for me, has been a key to finding the resilience that helps weather the storm that this year has been. That connection comes in connection to community, to communities like this, to communities of friends. And one of the weird blessings of this year is that people who live in all parts of the world suddenly feel as close as people who live one town over. And it has in some ways expanded that connection. There's also that connection to the global and historical community of Jews, right? That we have connection thousands of years back and all across the world. And you can plant your feet on the ground and you can feel those roots going down all the way to our ancestors. And most of all, connection with the divine. And here I want to introduce an idea and an exercise that I hope you'll join me in for a moment. Every year I go to a conference in January, a conference of other rabbis, and I took a workshop this year on mindful self-compassion. And a lot of it was about embodied mindful self-compassion. And so this is a hybrid of the things I learned there and some of my own ideas. So a practice of mindful self-compassion, I'm actually regretting this necklace now, is to place your hand on your heart. And as we're in a place of not having any physical contact with other people, not hugging, not holding hands, a hand on the heart has been so very therapeutic in these times. And to take deep breaths, which is part of every mindful practice. But when I think of deep breaths, I think of the idea that when God created humanity, God created us with breath and animated humankind with breath. And over the past few months, as we felt so much disconnection, a moment of connection has come in those deep breaths. Because if the idea is that we are all created in the image of God, not just Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, but all of us, and if the idea is that we are all animated with that divine breath, I've started to believe that if we breathe deeply enough, we can breathe past our own breath and access that well of breath of the divine. And that connection to the divine is always in us, and it's always accessible. So I want to close out with a nigun as we have our hands over our hearts. It has words I'm going to try to drop in the chat box. Look at that, it worked. The words the words are Nishmat Kol Chai Tevarech Et Shimcha Ad Hashem Elokeinu. May the breath of all that lives bless your name, Adonai, our God. Nishmat Kol Chai Tevarech Et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, Nishmat Kol Chai Tevarech Et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu, Nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, nai, nai. May we be blessed with a year of resilience.
Amen. 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 Oof. I feel like we should all just take a second here. Rachel, thank you. Thank you.
My honor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to introduce our next presenter, who is really a very meaningful person. I'm making me cry, Rachel. You're taking us down into our souls. So thank you for doing that. Sharon is a soul friend of mine. Someone who was a rock for me in a hard time that I went through literally 35 years ago, 34 years, whatever, it doesn't matter, a long time ago. And you're somebody that I learned from. Just knowing you, I learned from you. So that's not the introduction. That's just my relationship. So Sharon, just to give everybody a context, is the managing director of the Jewish Education Innovation Challenge. Is the managing director of the Jewish Education Innovation Challenge. She attended Jewish day schools, followed by study at Stern College for Women at Yeshiva University, and has a BS in nursing from the University of Maryland. She is a teacher. She is a Master of Arts in Jewish Education. After being in the nursing field for many years, she started teaching Torah. And she taught and was the department chair for Tanakh and Torah Shabbat Peh, Meshgiach Ruchonit of the upper school of the Jewish day school in Silver Spring, Maryland. Most recently was the director of Jewish life at the Jewish day school at the nation's capital. She is coming to us from Silver Spring, Maryland. She teaches adult education classes in the DC area and literally all over the world. And again, she is somebody in my estimation has taken Torah and embodied it. So Sharon, you're up.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to Alyssa for giving me the opportunity of connecting with everyone this evening. And interestingly enough, I'm going to echo some of the themes that Rachel surfaced. I guess we are all living in the same world at the moment. So I want to begin by sharing a bit about myself because most of you have never met me. I got divorced around 6 years ago and moved from downtown Washington, D.C. to the nearby suburb of Silver Spring, Maryland, where I live now. As Alyssa said, this is where I'm coming to you from. Thank God I have 3 grown children who were all on their own by the time of my divorce. I have 1 son who lives with his wife in Jerusalem. 1 son is in Boston beginning his 2nd year of law school. And my daughter and her husband live around 4 blocks from me in Silver Spring. Before COVID, I would see in person my Jerusalemites twice a year, once during Passover when they came to me, and once during the Sukkot holiday when I would go visit them in Israel. My Boston son I would see 5, 6 times a year, and I was with my local kids on a regular basis. And then COVID hit, and I was alone. Haven't seen my Jerusalemites since October 2019. I was fortunate enough to be in a conference in Boston in January 2020, so that's the last time I saw my son in Boston. And I've seen my local kids maybe around 4 times since March, but never close enough to touch them or to hug them. But before you feel bad for me, please don't. Because although I live by myself, and though I haven't gotten nearer than 6 feet to anyone in over 5 months, I'm never alone. Before COVID, I was an avid shul goer, attending synagogue religiously, so to speak, every Shabbat. The last time I went to shul was on March 7th, and on March 14th, I began praying by myself at home, and I found that right there in the room with me was my friend God. Now, you may think this sounds a little bit odd, but I know that God is always with me. Sometimes I can feel the divine presence more strongly looking right over my shoulder. And at other times, it's the intellectual realization that this beautiful, intricate, and orderly world yes, even viruses are part of the order, could not have come into being without an intelligent, intentional force with a capital F behind it. For a lot of years, I've had a habit of talking to my friend God all the time throughout the day. I'm not talking about formal prayer, although I do that also. I'm talking about like when I would have a trunk full of groceries and 3 little kids in the car, and I would find a parking space right in front of my house in Georgetown. Or when I would be giving a class and somehow the right words just come out of my mouth. And I look heavenward and I say, thanks, God. In addition, so many things have happened in my life that when they were occurring, I couldn't possibly understand why this would happen to me. And in retrospect, I totally get that God was preparing me for something in my future. Many episodes in my life, from being the child of Holocaust survivors to working in a pediatric intensive care unit for 10 years to my quite uncomfortable divorce, have taught me how to be resilient, how to roll with the punches, and more than anything else, they've taught me the beauty and the preciousness of life. So that when I'm now alone during COVID, it's okay. It's more than okay. I revel in every single day that God has given me on this green earth. My teacher, Rav Soloveitchik, who was one of the great Jewish philosophers of the 20th century, among his many other accomplishments, introduces the concept of existential loneliness in his book, Lonely Man of Faith. Here's what existential loneliness is, explained in my own terms. And I'm sure this has happened to everyone at some point in their lives. So you know how when you would go to a movie with a friend and you felt like this movie absolutely changed your life, and on the way out you would say to the person with you, that was the most amazing thing, and they would respond, yeah, it was okay. And inside you, you couldn't really understand how they didn't feel the earth move under their feet like you did. This leads us to a feeling that no one on earth can ever understand us or what we feel or what we're going through. And to a certain extent, that's the absolute truth. No one will ever completely understand. Rav Soloveitchik suggests that this is one reason that humans have ongoing relationships with the divine. God accompanies us through every second of our lives, and God will understand everything. As the Torah says in Dvarim, Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 28, Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu. God gets the hidden stuff. Loose translation of my own. So how does all of this relate to entering the month of Elul in a lead up to Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur? Chances are very good that we're going to be in our own homes for High Holy Day services this year. Even if your synagogue is streaming services, you're going to be on your own, not in the presence of the rabbi or the cantor. If your synagogue's traditional, you'll be even more on your own without a live service. And even if somehow you're attending in person, it's not going to be the packed pews we're used to. It won't involve the usual pomp and circumstance of the liturgy and the sermons. But no matter how many or how few people we're surrounded by, it's not about the people. Elul and the High Holy Days are about healing and restoring our relationship with our friend, our parent, our creator, and our Redeemer God. The divine takes care of us, feeding us, clothing us, giving researchers the knowledge to look for and hopefully find a cure for this awful virus. In God's world, the sun rises each and every day, just like it's supposed to, giving our lives at least a little bit of stability. And in exchange, as part of this connection, the divine asks us to take care of all of God's other children in the way that they deserve, to treat others fairly, to attend to charitable needs reasonably, to speak to and about other people in kind and just ways, to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy, whatever that means to you. And without a doubt, we have let the Almighty down during the year due to our human frailties. And now, once a year, we're given the chance to repair, restore, and strengthen our relationship with the one above. So here's a little exercise that I suggest for each one of you, and that includes me, to do during this month of Elul. Think back on your life to figure out how God has helped you prepare yourself for our current situation. And when you do figure it out, thank the merciful one out loud so that you can hear your own expression of gratitude. And then think about all of the good that has been showered upon you this year, whether health, employment, family, friends, the internet, so at least we can see our loved ones, if not be with them in person, that kind of thing. And then think about ways we may have damaged our relationship with God by mistreating other human beings, or even mistreating God in the divine self. And remember, ultimately, we're never alone. We may be separated from other human beings with whom we really want to be, but we're always accompanied in life by our constant companion, God. I'll leave you with one final thought. Only twice in the book of Psalms does the following clause appear: Karov Hashem, God is near. One time, the clause God is near is followed by to all that call upon him, to all that call upon him in truth. All we need to do is call out to God and we will be answered. In contrast, the other time that God is near appears, it's followed by God is near to the brokenhearted, and those crushed in spirit he will save. The brokenhearted don't even need to call out. God is there with us without us even having to beckon. I hope that for everyone, this new year brings us health, happiness, and peace, and a renewed relationship with our friend God. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to keep moving us along. Although I feel like there's so much, there's all recorded, so we can listen to it over again. And these pearls, these gems of your presentations, worth re-listening. Michelle. And there you are down there. The daughter of secular American folk singer, teacher, and traditional Iranian-born cantor, Rabbi Michelle Dardashti, was raised on a brand of Judaism which is multicultural, meta-denominational, musical, and global. She became a rabbi to share the gifts her parents' eclectic Judaism afforded her: passion, hope, wonder, gratitude, empathy, responsibility, and joy. Rabbi Dardashti hails from Los Angeles, Baltimore, New York, with stops in Uruguay, Connecticut, and 4 years in Jerusalem along the way. She views Jewish learning and living as rich and winding journeys and is eager to travel the road with students of all walks of life. She was ordained and received a master's in Jewish education from JTS and has lived and worked in Manhattan and Stanford, and she is presently the rabbi in Brown RISD Hillel. And Rabbi Dardashti, Michelle, my dear friend, you are up. You have to
You did great, Alyssa. Sorry I didn't send you a bio. You found good stuff. Yeah, wow. Chevra, it's really a beautiful thing to be with you all tonight. There's really deep love, actually. There really is between those of us on this call who have known each other before. And I'm sure, Sharon, you're going to be a part of that. You know, when Alyssa asked us to speak, you know, she really did. She said, generally when I get asked to speak before Rosh Hashana or like about Elul, I have go-to texts, right? Like certain texts that are my texts that reflect like what I think about this period. And Alyssa was like, no, like just talk about your process. Like where are you at as like a woman, as like a mother? And I was like, right. So like, here's the thing about holding a community. A lot of where you're at is about thinking about where your whole community is at. But it was a huge gift. The truth is, I think the question to sort of think about what do I want to say to women about specifically about the ways that I think about this period and Dafka, specifically this year. There's a book by Rabbi Alan Liu that's called This Is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared. And it is about the Amun and I think, first of all, Rabbi Alan Liu is a gaon, like an amazing gadol who died young. So it's really very interesting to think about his life and what he knew or didn't know about what was awaiting him. But he lived with an awareness that this entire period is about that awareness that we are always staring our mortality in the face. Right, this entire period is about that. So like, Rachel, you apologize for going dark. Like Dafka, it's an amazingly, it's a wild thing that that we our biggest holidays, right? That what they're about is getting us to really understand, that we don't understand and we can't know how much time we have left to do our living. Right, to do our growing, to do our giving, to do our relationship building. So, the first thing that Elul calls us to look at as we start, the sort of light start that Elul, I think, has to that. Guys, tonight is Mamash, tonight is Rosh Chodesh Elul, and like if nothing says the power of how we Jews believe that in the darkest moment, it's the moments to celebrate than Rosh Chodesh, right? Rosh Chodesh, we don't celebrate the moon when it's full. We celebrate holidays, Dafka, when the moon is full, right? Like Sukkot falls on a full moon, Pesach falls on a full moon, right? But we celebrate the moon when we can't see it. So like already, right? What we're acknowledging is that we celebrate when we can't even see yet the fullness. We celebrate at a moment when things are dark, but we know we're going towards something. So the way that Elul helps us get there, right, and helps prepare us for the really hard work of looking into the eye of the hurricane or looking into the eye of our mortality and all that we don't know, is actually looking at 3 levels of relationship, right? So Sharon, you said that this period is about restoring our relationship, with the divine, but really you encompassed in that, really it's about restoring all of our relationships. So Elul, right, is an acronym for Ani Dodi V'Dodi Li, I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. And the reason is because it's all about looking at our relationships with the various beloveds in our lives. Now it starts with a beloved that is us. So, the 3 levels of relationship that we think about Jewishly, or that I think about, right, is Ben Ani La'atzmi, between me and myself, right? Ben Adam Lechavero, between humans and humans, and between Ben Adam Lemakom, between humans and God. And again, the reason that we're looking at all of these relationships is because actually it goes back to the tools of resilience that Rachel was talking about. Without looking at these and without building upon these relationships, these interconnectedness, and like without starting from a place of self-love, we're not going to get to a place of love of other. But also if we can't access that feeling that Sharon talks about of like, we're not alone, right? That there's love in the beyond for us, it's hard to access the self-love that allows us to love outward. So I'm going to come back to those tools and to those 3 levels of relationship. But what I thought would be cool is to share with you a bit of how I think about the Yamim Noraim and Rosh Hashana in particular, from a lens that's particularly feminine, that's particularly about being a woman, since I'm in this context. I think that I never really, one of the most profound realizations for me was noticing that this phrase, that goes through Rosh Hashanah over and over again. The phrase is Hayom Harat Olam. Okay, anyone know, like, what does that phrase mean? We usually translate it as like, today is the birthday of the world, right? But a woman who's pregnant is beherayon. This phrase, Hayom Harat Olam, is today the world is pregnant. Now, you know, for sure, this first dawned on me when I was pregnant with my first child. I have 3 children, Baruch Hashem, Bli Ayin Hara, Tfu Tfu Tfu, right? But like when I was pregnant with my first kid is when it first dawned on me, like, what is going on here? Today the world is pregnant. You know, like when you're experiencing something, you see it everywhere. You know, you start to like hear it on the radio, like every single thing seems to be talking about it. I'm like, what is going on with the Rosh Hashanah liturgy and all of the readings? You are hit over the head, and it's not the imagination of a pregnant woman, and you are hit over the head with imagery of birth and of children, and of children, a desire for children, then a hope that children survive, right? And I mean, for everything from, right, I'm talking about like all the liturgical readings, when you think about the birth, you know, the desire to have a son, by Avram and Sarah's desire to have a son, they finally, and then Hagar bears a son and she's cast away. We read all of these stories, right? He almost dies, and then we have Yitzchak is finally born, but then he's almost sacrificed, and then Hannah is praying and she's weeping because she wants a child so much, and then, right, and all of these pieces point to the precariousness of life. There is no moment, there is no human experience. I began to realize, like, so what's going on here? Why so much about, why Hayom Harat Olam? Because as these readings are also about that, we are living always at the razor's edge. Like, as much as we don't want to realize it, people are like, what if I get COVID? I'm like, right, I'm on the phone with you right now. Like, please God, I won't get hit by a car. You can't live like that, okay? You can't actually live like that at every moment. However, the truth is we are actually in that every moment. But we can't actually live in that consciousness. Everyone nod if you get what I'm saying, right? We can't actually live with that consciousness, but that's the reality of life. And there's no experience that I can think of, and that apparently, you know, the rabbis could think of, that more reflects the reality, that experience, than pregnancy. Now, I want to say, you know, and I'm talking about this from a place of like, whether you've ever thought about becoming pregnant, whether you've tried to get pregnant and couldn't become pregnant, whether you've been pregnant and lost a pregnancy, whether you, at every stage of thinking about conception, right? As a woman, you carry within you the ability every day to understand that it's like, in a really unique way, we carry this experience that really every human being experiences, but you never feel it so poignantly as when you're trying to conceive or when you are holding pregnancy and trying to maintain it. And, you know, I remember teaching, I feel like the sermon when I first spoke about this, I taught students, it's why we don't say mazal tov to someone when they're pregnant, right? We say b'sha'a tova. So part of what we are learning to cultivate, I think, in the Yamim Noraim, as we lead up to the Yamim Noraim, and what the Yamim Noraim is trying to train us to have, is like sort of a b'sha'a tova consciousness. Like to, you know, when you say b'sha'a tova, it's not like it's a huge bracha you're giving somebody, right? You're saying like, please God, and you know, you can say b'sha'a, it's not only about pregnancy, but again, pregnancy epitomizes it, right? You can say b'sha'a tova when you've just bought a house, like in good time, it means in good time, right? We are hoping that all of the things that we're working towards will please God happen in good time. You know, like, it's very scary, but also quite incredible, right? Like, what is the power of each day when you live with that kind of, I want to say yirah, like fear, right? Of the reality of living on the razor's edge and that we don't know. Then how much miracle actually is there each day when you, like, we wonder why we're supposed to say modani every morning, right? Like, thank God I'm awake, you open your eyes, and it seems a little ridiculous, right? Like modani, like, do we really believe it when we say it? Like modani, the only time I ever really felt that was when I was pregnant. Every morning I would wake up and I would be like, oh, I feel my baby. Oh, thank God my baby's still alive today. Like, mamash, I really had that feeling. But the truth is we all We all have that feeling. We all need to cultivate that feeling because that's the truth, right? Does everyone understand what I'm saying, right? That pregnancy really is, this is real and we're completely unprepared. It is the most real experience on some level, right? It is in micro what each of us really are living every single day of our life, but can't possibly feel with that much depth. Like, is there still a heartbeat? Do I still have a heartbeat? Am I still breathing? But to be able to live with that consciousness, right? To be able to say, today the world is pregnant, it contains in it both dread and awe, fear, yirah, but also yirah from the perspective of like awesomeness. Like, today the world is pregnant. Like today, like it could be anything. Today I'm breathing. Today my baby's alive. So today could birth an entire, like, who knows what? B'sha tova. So, you know, I think that what I want to say really just to us as women is that because we are the bearers of, or the potential bearers, right, of all potential future, women in some way, we embody life's precariousness. Whether we're able to conceive, whether we ever try to conceive, we embody life's precariousness, which also means that I believe that we, as the saying goes, are made for this moment. Our bodies know how to hold uncertainty. I think it is no coincidence that the holiday that is given specifically to women is Rosh Chodesh, when the moon is dark. We know how to look up at a dark sky and say, like, Chodesh Tov, like, we know how to celebrate at the moment where we cannot see yet the light and trust that it's going to be there, right? We are the people who, in leaving Egypt, thought to pack our timbrels. Like, we could barely pack food, but we brought drums. So on some level, you know, Alyssa, this was an invitation to think about what our bodies as women, the muscle memory, right? What our bodies and our heritage as women, from the chagim that were given to us, from the instruments we've carried, right? Remind us about the strength that we hold for this very heavy moment, right? COVID, right? It's kaved. I don't know why no one's been talking about that. I tell people that every chance I get, that like, I think all the time about how COVID is kaved. It's the same heaviness. It's like this heavy, heavy, heavy weight that we're working to figure out how to lift each day. So I want to close by returning actually to the resilience tools. What I want to say is this, you know, Rachel, you talked about how you talked about 3 keys to resilience. Before you even named that you were going to say 3, the truth is what I think every year is that tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah, that essentially, like, I'm gonna translate those. So essentially, like, the scary prayer, the scariest prayer that we have on Rosh Hashana Yom Kippur, the prayer that epitomizes, like, this is real and you are completely unprepared. The prayer that epitomizes, like, you have no control, but you can control your response, and that's all you can control, right? Is the Unatana Tokef prayer. It's the prayer that's like the who shall live and who shall die prayer. Who shall die by fire, who shall die by... That prayer, we say it on Rosh Hashanah both days and on Yom Kippur. And like, in the midst of this prayer where we're saying, like, you know, and Rosh Hashanah it's written and Yom Kippur it is sealed, and who shall live and who shall die, suddenly we're like throwing these lifelines. I call them the 3 T's, right? And now I want to call them the 3 T's, the tools of resilience. They're listed, they're tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah. And to me, they bring us right back to these 3 levels of relationship that Allah is helping us work on. Tshuva is about my relationship with myself. Can I return the shuv to myself and think about what do I have? Like, what are my strengths? What do I already have no matter what else is going on? Like, I'm alone with God in a room, as Sharon was talking about. Like, what have I got that I need to most work on and cultivate, that I need to tend to, that I want to go back to? Tshuva. And then tefillah, like, tefillah is about our relationship with the beyond, right? Ben Adam Makom, between us and God, like, you know, but it's reflexive, palel, right? It's this idea of like being in conversation with the beyond, reaching out beyond ourselves. And then tzedakah, right? Like acts of justice, that is the interpersonal, that is the connectedness that you landed on, Rachel, right? That is the ben adam lechavero stuff. And so I guess I want to, you inspired me to just also want to end with allowing people and a little bit of an exercise, Rachel. By the way, the melody that she taught is written by Joey Weisenberg, and he happens to have written it in Bran Rizdi Hillel. I should just tell you. It's a little known fact that his Nishmat Kol Chai was written in Bran Rizdi Hillel. I can show you the hallway sometime when you're there. Just like, yeah, I have to say, he's a dear friend of mine, and he wrote it there. Okay. So, so I want to end with this little exercise, and I want to invite you maybe to do it like in greater orech, like at greater length on your own. But I want to invite you to, like, for a second, close your eyes and like scan your relationships, scan your, your ben adam la'atzmo, your between you and yourself relationships, and think about, like, what does it look like to grab your own hand in this moment? Like, to return to yourself. What's one thing that you love about yourself that you want to make sure you get to bring out this year, that you don't want to let be stifled, that you don't want to forget about, that you don't want to be neglecting, that you want to return to strong, that's going to be this tool for you? Try to envision it. Then scan your relationship, and each of these could be done in such greater length, but scan your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like, right? Or Bruchahi. But think about your relationship with God, with the Blessed Holy One, and think about, like, what does that even mean for you? Is God nature? Is God like your ability to breathe, the feelings of love? Is it mitzvot? Is there a particular mitzvah that you want to reach out to and grab onto this year that's going to allow you to feel connected beyond yourself to a blueprint of relationship with the divine? Is it you're missing? You could add one prayer, you could add one mitzvah, like something you want to bring in that'll help you feel connected. Meditation, prayer. And then last, and this is like really we have to spend a lot of time on this month, is like scan your relationships with the people in your life, your family members. And then moving out from there, your family members, your neighbors, literally your closest friends who you don't ever have time to talk to. Like, let's be real. Your colleagues at work, the people you see in shul or don't see in shul, but what if we went? And think about during this month of Elul, like, whose hand, even metaphorically in this moment, do you need to be reaching out for? Where is there either brokenness that needs mending or somebody who needs supporting? Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. I'm my beloved's and my beloved is mine. I pray that we can do this work this month of cultivating our love of self and other and beyond, such that we can like live in the space of Bisha'at Tova consciousness and uncertainty that's going to allow us to really face this world's pregnancy with zeal and excitement to seize every day to the fullest extent that we can, to respond as lovingly, kindly, and resiliently as we can.
Amen. Thank you, Michelle. Oof. Oof. My friend Sarah, we're ready and poised to hear your words. I'll introduce you. Acting Senior Rabbi Temple Bethel, served Temple Bethel since 2003. Upon her ordination from the New York campus of Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, Rabbi Mack spent a year studying at Pardes in Jerusalem. She's from Seattle, Washington, graduated from Brandeis University in 1996 with majors in Near Eastern and Judaic Studies and English. Immediate past president of the Board of Rabbis of Greater Rhode Island, served on boards of the Jewish Alliance, the Chaplaincy Center, JCDS-RI, interfaith work, just working tirelessly for social justice, for community, founder of the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, working with interfaith youth dialogue between Jews, Muslims, and Christian teens, as well as Breaking Bread program, running around the neighborhood, gardening, baking, teaching, chaplaincy work, pastoral work, taking care of anybody who crosses her path. Sarah, if you would mind sharing some words, please.
Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate it. And you know, when you asked if I would speak tonight, I couldn't say no, even though, and I know there are a number of people on who are on Temple Bethel's earlier 7 o'clock call, so back to back. But I didn't want to miss out being with my soul sisters, ever a chance to be with Rachel and Michelle. It's always a joy, and Sharon, wonderful to be with you, and for the first time tonight. So thank you, and a beautiful way to enter a season like no other. I mean, I feel like this is an Elul like no other Elul, and where to begin? And when you asked that question, I really thought, you know, what is it about this Elul and this time that feels different from previous years, and where am I? And frankly, in some ways, the difference is who even has the time and space to sit down and contemplate that. It's just a really unusual moment. I think it's interesting in this pandemic, each of us has found that maybe we have a habit or a skill that has been uniquely suited to our quarantine. And for some that might be germophobia. And I will confess that for me that is making sure that we always have enough toilet paper. I won't call it hoarding. My husband might call it hoarding, but I will say that in the Mac Isaacs household, we never run out of a few things, and that is one of them. But that is, I think you're wondering, how am I getting there to a growth point of where we are for Elul? You know, I think we live in a time where there's a tendency to hold on to things. There's a tendency to get more and more and more, to hoard, to have a sense of scarcity in the world. And I think that is damaging. That's damaging to our souls. And I think, you know, walking into Elul, it's a really nice opportunity to think, how can I let go of some of that? And a friend said to me this week, Sarah, can you put on your abundance glasses? I loved that. That really inspired me as I prepared for this evening, and is really something that I feel like I'm working with moving towards the new year. What does that look like to take off scarcity glasses and to put on abundance glasses? How does that transform the way in which we look at the world, the way in which we ourselves operate in the world, the way we interface with one another, and also the way we interface with the divine, right? I feel like that our relationship with God can be impacted by the lens of abundance. You know, our tradition has much to say about that. In Pirkei Avot, the rabbis teach that the person who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is a fool, but the person who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine is truly evil. That is so sinister that the rabbis of the Mishnah even caution, perhaps that is why Sdom was destroyed. That idea of scarcity and of greed and of taking that on has a sense of evilness about it. And when we look at many of our biblical villains. We also see that sense of looking at the world through the lens of scarcity. Pharaoh for sure is afraid that there isn't enough to go around. Think about Haman at Purim. Haman's fear surfaces in the face of admiration shown to Mordecai that he feels was due to him. So, you know, I think we can think about the ways in which scarcity damages our souls and really prevents us from being the way we want to be in the world. And at its very worst, our tradition teaches it can even breed cruelty. I think as women, it's very easy to succumb to this idea that we're not enough. And I think that falls into this idea of abundance and scarcity. What is it like to walk into the new year and to say, not only do we have enough, we are enough. We give enough to those around us, and especially in this moment where there's so many pulls, our children, our families, you know, even going to the grocery store feels like a major exposition. Every decision is excruciating. It feels like maybe there isn't even enough of us to go around. I think it's a really powerful thing to say, you know what, each one of us is enough. We are enough, and to walk with that into the new year. I wasn't actually going to go in this direction, but both everybody else inspired me, and I feel like after Michelle's birth talk, I think I kind of want to end on thinking about the idea of what does this idea of abundance look like at a time where it's so broken. It does feel like it's hard to put those glasses on when the world, every day we look at the news, it's a really hard place to inhabit. And it's interesting, if we look at the word for crisis in Hebrew, and I'm sure there are many people among us tonight who could tell us what that is. It's mashber, and at the core of that, it really is broken. Or break. But it's interesting, if we look throughout the Tanakh, that same root is used to convey hope. And the Hebrew language is so amazing in that way, that sometimes these dual meanings, it's used in Psalm to convey expectation. But my favorite usage of this word that can be crisis is in the prophet Isaiah uses it to describe a birth stool. The place where ancient women gave birth. In many ways, it teaches us that a crisis, while shining light on what is broken, is actually a moment that is pregnant with possibility. And I think that is the very meaning of wearing lenses of abundance. And frankly, that is my hope and my prayer for this new year.
So much. So it's we've been listening and thinking and emoting and feeling, breathing and singing for an hour. And I think that my vision for this gathering has happened, that we would all be inspired and that it would go deep, that the messages of our presenters, of our friends, of our teachers, of people who are searching and growing and learning and experiencing and holding hands and dancing in a circle, the idea of being in a circle, that we're equal to each other and that we can learn from everybody, and that we achieved that, I believe. I think that I'm going away with a lot of tools in my back pocket of resiliency, thinking about Sharon. I heard Sharon say something, a little bit about the consistency of the sun and the moon and Rosh Chodesh, and the idea of birth of possibility, of going back to the source of our souls, of being interconnected, all of us to each other, and that Rosh Hashanah is this idea of coming back to the root, And here we are, we're connecting at these very deep roots, as man's likened to a tree with deep roots. We're rooted in the people, we're rooted in history, and we're rooted with each other. I'm going to throw something out, actually, that I hadn't thought to do, but I'm going to do it. That I have a friend who's written a 40-day program. So 40 days from tonight, tomorrow, until Yom Kippur. There's 40 days, and 40 is a significant number of birth, of like 40 weeks of gestation, of creation. That 40 is a new reality being born. And so if anybody, I'm not going to introduce the program because I was going to do it literally on my own, but if anybody would like to join me in doing a 40-day challenge of contemplating different teachings every day for the next 40 days to take us till Yom Kippur, just be in touch with me privately. If anybody would like to say anything, if you feel like you need to go, please go. If you want to stay and chat, we can open it up for a little bit of schmoozing, because I would hate for us not to listen to some of the other women who are here listening so intently, but probably have some thoughts. Maybe they'd like to share just some brief ideas or thoughts. If anybody would like to just unmute themselves and chime in, we'd love to hear from you. And if you feel like it's enough for your night and you've got a lot of to inspire you, then please feel free to move on. Who's brave? Okay. So I thank you all for coming. Please check out Core Connects Rhode Island website. Lots of things coming up in this month that you are all invited to. You don't have to be local. We have women here from Los Angeles, from North Carolina, from all over the country. And so you are all invited to come and to any of my programs that we're putting on. If you have ideas for programs, I'm always looking for that. And come take a dip in the Providence mikveh, or if you're not near Providence and you want to go to the mikveh, I recommend it as something to birth us into the new world, into the new year. Thank you, everybody. What's the goodbye wave on Zoom? And a hug, an air hug. Love to everybody. Should be go from strength to strength, and connect whenever you need to connect with me, connect with each other. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay. Okay, very good. Everybody should have a really good night. Lots of love to all.
You too.